Hi, everybody, and welcome to a GZERO Media special report. I am Tony Maciulis, or Maciulis, as it would be pronounced in Lithuania, and our guest would certainly know. He is the long-serving now Foreign Minister of that nation, Linas Linkevičius. And Minister, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much as well.
So there's a lot going on in the world, for sure, but I want to start with Belarus. This weekend, yet again, widespread protests throughout the region. As people know, since August, there's been a fair amount of unrest because there's a feeling that the election to re-elect Alexander Lukashenko was rigged. Can you just give us a sense of what the latest is on the ground there and what's happening right now?
In short, it's still, as I'm calling, quite a stalemate, situation, because more than 50 days already after these elections, which were fake, basically, people were not just disappointed, but they protesting, which was unusual in Belarus. Usually there were some protests, but not in such a big numbers. And they still on the streets, still protesting, although they are really intimidated, beaten, raped, even tortured, put into the custody. And still, as I said, they're still so courageous and trying to fight for their right to choose, basically, and asking not too much, just to have normal elections and to elect their leadership. So it's still going on, basically, as we speak. And outgoing leadership, they're reluctant to talk to no one except Kremlin, and rejecting all calls for mediation or facilitation of anything, and definitely even, recalling, so to say, licenses for journalists, especially for foreign journalists. They are not able to perform their duties anymore. So trying to hide what they are doing, basically. But in this century, it's not so easy to hide. Basically, it's also quite well known worldwide. Unfortunately, Russia also is staying quite of stubborn position, continues to support this compromised leadership, and also rejecting any calls for new elections. And this is, as I'm calling, stalemate, basically. I believe Lukashenko counts, as usually, that he can solve the problems in his own way, again, through these intimidations and other brutality. And he maybe believes that people will be tired, or maybe winter is coming. Also, weather will not be so good, and he expects that everything will calm down, and Western countries, as sometimes happening, will take this new normal. So for us, it's also very important to stay united, to also to express our views quite in the clear way, and not to allow them to win in this situation, basically.
Now, Lithuania in Europe is a relatively small country, but you've played an outsized role in this story. Belarus is obviously your neighbor. Can you talk a little bit about what specifically Lithuania has done to help the people of Belarus, particularly the opposition leader, and why it matters so deeply to you and to your nation?
And many reasons. First of all, it's very close. We are speaking now with you 30 kilometers to the border. And this border is 650 kilometers long. So it's really, and country is very big. Also already quite integrated into Russia, basically, by all means. And they're implementing the so-called two-state union agreement being implemented for 20 years. So country really losing independence and sovereignty every day. But after what happened, it was even faster. Really, this definitely quite disturbing us. But these people are really very nice, as I said. People deserve to be treated in different way. And our people, they still remember this fight for freedom themselves. And basically, it's one of the reasons why they are really not just showing empathy, but they are also ready to show this solidarity. It's not just government, but also people. I don't know whether you remember, but this Baltic Way 31 years ago, from Tallinn to Vilnius, 2 million were standing, also not knowing what will happen next day. But it was unarmed resistance. So something same happened also recently with this freedom way from Vilnius to the border of Belarus. People were standing with the flowers, with the families, with the children, with flags, and that was the best indicator that people are really not, they're not impartial, so to say. They definitely want to show the solidarity. So this explains a lot. And during these events, when these opposition members, they were intimidated, we really helping them. It's not now started, this assistance. We did that also before. Many of them found the refuge here in Vilnius, those who's thinking in different way, or freedom fighters, opposition people. But before these elections, it was also done, and we issued national visas to a number of them. Visas were valid for 1 year, and among them it was also Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, now national leader, and she sent her children to Vilnius before. So when she was really pressed, she undergone enormous pressure by authorities and provided not too many options to flee the country or to face other circumstances which were not very permissible. So she decided to flee to Lithuania, and we just accepted. So she now acts from here, from Vilnius, making statements, meeting leaders, traveling, meeting with media. But also I can say that she definitely experienced a very difficult situation, and she was never prepared to be politician. You know, her husband was running for the president, but was put into the custody, and he's in prison as we speak. So you can imagine how she feels, and how it's not easy for her to act, to perform, to talk, to speak. But nevertheless, she's here, and this is also kind of attraction to everyone. Everybody tries to meet her, to talk, you know, to show the solidarity, support. So this, in short, the picture where we are. And Lithuanians definitely are quite right in the middle of these events, and we're trying, not acting for them because we have no reason to do that, but we're trying to provide refuge to help those who are exposed to danger, and at least to do what we can in this situation to support these people.
Can I ask you, Minister, are you disappointed that there hasn't been more action from NATO, or what more do you think the multilateral global community should be doing right now for Belarus?
No, NATO maybe has no role in this conflict, you know. Basically, we're just observing the situation with regard to possible tensions, military tensions, which is also not excluded, by the way. You know that outgoing leader, he called for external military support, although nobody threatening this country. And very recently he made a statement that he's sending half of the army to protect western borders from possible NATO attack, which is also false, basically, but it serves his domestic rhetoric, maybe domestic audience. But since he said that, maybe he ready to do something in order to provoke. So in this regard, we really should be vigilant and should look at the situation very seriously. And definitely we will avoid any kind of provocation, and we will not respond to any of these threats ourselves, in order to really to not to help those who would like to provoke. But nevertheless, having said this, I would really stress that this is definitely serious, but no role for NATO. But the international community at large definitely can be more active. But as usually, or as often, I would say, we are doing something too late, too little, you know, in reaction. And here is not the first crisis, by the way. We are discussing with you or with the colleagues how it's happening, why it's happening. I could recall war in South Caucasus in 2008 and occupation of 20% of territory of Georgia, or annexation of Crimea in 2014, ongoing aggression in Donbass, or many other events which are definitely not in line what we would like to see, the development of free democratic countries. But this is happening. So definitely would like to have more clear and tough position from international community. And we are working on that, but at the same time trying to provide something as national view and regional, if it's possible, issuing sanctions, for instance, which you know that the European Union just recently agreed on sanctions, but after a long period. But we did that with Latvians and Estonians a bit earlier, also showing some signal that those who did what they did, they must be kept accountable. More to say, those who allegedly committed crimes, they should be prosecuted, basically. It's another story. So sanctions, it's the least we can do in this situation. We also should support civil society, free media, those victims of repressions, to find funds to support them, to find the way how to do that. A lot of questions, a lot of problems, and we are working on that with the international community, with our colleagues in European Union, and that's the case. So yes, in short, we should do more, but as usually, sometimes we are not capable to react on time, and that's a pity.
Your nation recently welcomed U.S. troops for training rotations along the border. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what exactly they're accomplishing there?
First of all, we for a long time demanded some solidarity by our allies because it's not a big secret that we have a lot of gaps of capabilities in military terms in Baltic states. We have no air forces, for instance. Our missile defense capabilities are quite limited, and this is open secret, so to say. So we definitely rely on our allies to come and to stay as permanent as possible. And they were very important decisions made in NATO summit to dispatch this so-called enhanced forward presence, troops, which is NATO mission. And in our case, in Lithuania, Germany's framework nation, but also countries from Belgium, from Luxembourg, from Netherlands, troops are here. But in parallel, the United States contribution is very valuable because it's done in parallel, as I said, in addition. And they are doing that not for the first time. Also, deploying here around 500 soldiers, now second time doing this, with armed vehicles, with tanks. And this is not a terribly big force, but this is definitely footprint on the ground, boots on the ground by United States, and needless to say how it is important. And it creates direct and also implicit security guarantees. So this is extremely valuable because if we are talking about deterrence factor, so the best deterrent is presence on the ground. And that's exactly what we need. And we value very much what is done by our NATO allies and in particular by United States. It's indeed very useful, tangible, visible, and very clear demonstration of solidarity.
I want to turn now to talk about the COVID pandemic. First, how is Lithuania faring right now? And do you fear the rising numbers in Europe currently?
Yeah, numbers are rising. I would say first wave was managed quite well, by all means, I believe. It's really was, measures were taken, restrictions were also introduced, and people were not very happy, but we understood, all of us were quite disciplined, so to say. And there was closure of economy, but also not too painful, because our GDP will grow will drop 1.5% this year, which is not too much, by the way. And forecasts to grow for next year will be 3%, which is also, if nothing unexpected happened, that's not so bad. So all in all, now figures are changing, increasing. Indexes for 100,000 population per 2 weeks, it's 40 for the country, which is, again, one can say manageable. But we are having every week, we have very serious meetings of government and again, analyzing situation, coordinating with the partners. So we are vigilant, so to say. we are not in a position to close everything as it was during the first wave. Maybe there are reasons also for that, because we definitely should balance between measures which are unavoidable, but also of economy which also should work, because that could backflash to the everyday life of the people. So we are balancing and so far managing to go through all of that. But at the same time, I had to remind that very difficult now to take all decisions, be it radical or moderate, because a few days before elections, you can imagine the mood also in Lithuania. It's competing mood, so to say, between political parties, and it's not so easy for government to proceed in normal way, but we are trying to do our best, and that's the case.
Mm-hmm. What has been the reaction in Lithuania and certainly throughout Europe to President Trump's positive diagnosis?
As everyone, normal human being, definitely empathy, and who can say what? We would like to wish him to recover as soon as possible, as same as to everyone who is affected. So it's a big disaster, and you cannot expect, you don't know where from it's coming sometimes, and you definitely have no immunity. And who are you? Are you President of the United States, or are you somebody else? It's really yet another reminder how it is serious and how it's global. So the first reaction was definitely, concern, and as a normal human beings, everyone would like to wish him speedy recovery, same as to others.
My last question, when we last spoke, the last time I interviewed you, Donald Trump had not yet been elected. It was the summer of 2016. I'm just curious, from your perspective, what has been the biggest foreign policy shift you've noticed from the United States over these past 4 years?
There are a lot of shifts, I would say, because It was not the best time for multilateralism, right? After position of United States. Also, they departed from our discussions on climate change, for instance. Also, it was not the best time for free trade. We are a free trade country, and we believe in that. And the big part of our GDP goes from trade, basically. So we understand the value of that. So it's also, but with regard to the security, again, I'm coming back to defense security. This was enormous improvement, because we really never seen such a visible and tangible participation in the security affairs of our region. So that's also true. And that's also change, I would say, right? Because in rhetoric it was the same, but in practical implementation, we really could see much more happening on the ground, what we value very much. And we tried also ourselves to do in the good rational way with regard to the defense spendings, for instance. 2% club is not terribly big in NATO, by the way, but we are on the right side of this. And I feel how it is important also for United States during my last visit to United States, which was recently. And I met also Mike Pompeo and National Security Advisor O'Brien. So I understood how it was important for our very important strategic allies that we are definitely spending this amount of resources for defense and trying to be good allies. So we're trying to do our best, and also counting on our allies also to assist us, which is definitely very important.
Linas Linkevičius, thank you very much for joining us.
Appreciate. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again as well. And thank you all for watching. For GZERO Media, I'm Tony Maciulis. You can follow all the latest at gzeromedia.com. Thank you.